I was very lucky that when I first got this house, it was a rainy day, and I wasn't able to look at it on a sunny day. And so I didn't know what the light was going to be like, but to my great surprise, it's like full sun most afternoons, which is wonderful, which makes it really great for portraits over here in this room. And I always keep this, I keep the wall blank, so it's a good place for a portrait. I'm Todd Hido, and I'm a Bay Area photographer. I've often said about my work that I photograph like a documentarian, but I print like a painter. And what does that mean? Well, that basically means that like when I'm photographing, I very much try to not sort of interfere with a scene. Like I don't like stop and ask somebody to turn a light on in their house, or moving things around in the landscape or setting things up. I usually photograph what I find, and then later on in the darkroom or in Lightroom these days, I end up going through sort of constructing things to be the way I want them to be in the final product, instead of the way that comes out of the camera. I've found over the years that 99% of photographs, no matter what kind of camera they come from, are improved through some kind of printing process. And then another one that I've made, this is one of the pictures I made with my Leica S3, and I really enjoy just about how that, like, there's detail in all of this dark. You probably couldn't even pick it up on, a video, but it's amazing what's kind of in this dark area where it appears to be like not much, but it's all like twigs and sticks and whatnot. We were talking about like, photographing like a documentarian, but printing like a painter. I think this is a good example of that, because it's something that's sort of, obviously like, I'm able to pick up some of the purple hues in this picture. And then if I were to put something like this next to it, it has a little bit of that purple quality to it. And so I very much, when I think about making pictures together and putting things together, I really think about, like, well, what is it going to go with, and how does that all work? My process is often like, I really am the kind of photographer that just sort of wanders around and makes pictures. When I get back from a shoot, I'm the kind of person that always like to load my images right away and see what I got. And so I look at them, and then I start to go through and I see what works and what doesn't work. And I will say firstly that like everything I do is not good. I'm like most people where 90% of it is not good. And that 10% that's good is something that when I go take pictures, I hope I get something. And I find that having that attitude serves me well, because that way when things don't work out, I'm not so disappointed. And that does happen a lot. Basically, so that means that when you see a whole show of my work, it might have taken me 5 years to make those photographs. I might have traveled to like, 2 or 3 different parts of the country, or spent like 10 photo shoots with a person in order to get like a few good photographs. I just start comparing things, and it's usually a process of elimination where you find what you want. And then one other thing I would say that assists me, I think, when I'm working, is that I very much, like, I try to cover things well when I'm photographing. Like if I'm shooting and I'm able, and the time warrants it, and then the picture warrants it, like I will shoot a horizontal, I will shoot a vertical, I'll sometimes change my lens. I generally work with a 35mm lens on a 35mm aspect ratio camera. I love that shape, it works very well for me, and especially when making landscapes. And I find that doing a vertical is also really nice, because you're able to have this like tall picture that works well. One of the things that I'm really excited about is I've just ordered an adapter that will let me put my S3 lenses on my SL system cameras. And I'm very curious about that, because the image stabilization is still inside that camera, and it's going to work really well. But there's something about the S3 lenses that are just, they have a filmic quality to them that I find is really suitable. And and that's the thing about Leica in general is that, you know, you're able to put different lenses on different cameras. And one of my other lenses that I love, we haven't talked about, is I have a Noctilux, and I love that thing. And it's amazing to be able to put that on my SL3 camera. And then I can have that beautiful Noctilux like look where, you know, you're just using like the most smallest depth of field that you could get. And I find that works really well to focus your attention on a certain area of a picture. Having used the SL2S, and then the workhorse for me has always been the S3, I'm blown away that the SL3 packs all of these megapixels in this light and simple object. So if this camera, like I've said before in the past, like, you know, every camera is like a different paintbrush, and I find that like the SL3 is a paintbrush that paints a sharp photograph. It's actually so sharp that sometimes I need to like just tone it down a little bit in post-production, and that works really well for me. The beauty of this camera is that you can always make something a little softer, but you can't really ever make things a little sharper in post. That just doesn't work. And so having things be as crispy as you can get them, and then being able to go in just in ever so slightly, just taking the sharpness down a little bit. And then that way I'm able to match the pictures that I'm taking with this brand new camera with my whole archive of work that goes back. I've been doing this since 1986. Most of my career is on film, so I've got a lot of images. And so I always need to I keep that in mind when I'm like, you know, using a new tool or using a new paintbrush. This is a fancy paintbrush, and it allows me to go in whichever direction I need to go in. That looks good. My first SL3 print. Okay. So those are perfect prints. These are work prints. One of the things that I found about using the SL3 is there's an incredible range of latitude that I have in post-production when I'm making my prints, that basically, you know, we can call that I'm painting with light, you know, and I'm able to have the 60 megapixel sensor. It has the depth and it has the information that I need to do whatever I want to do with it. You can really push these files around. That's the other thing. The noise cancellation really works with this camera as well. And you know, it's just a pleasure to use. I find that one of the things that, you know, is true in photography is that when you make a picture with a camera, you either get a great negative or you get a great file. And the better that negative is, or the better that file is, the more you can play around with the image in the computer afterwards. And it's really important, like when you work in the dark, a lot of times, to be able to like pull things up, and then having like this amazing file that you can just really bring things up. Back in the day, you would overexpose your film, so you had a nice dense negative, so it had all of the detail in it. And then the exact opposite is true with, you know, digital, is you want to not blow out your highlights. And I find that like this camera is also not just great at the dark areas of a picture, but if you look at my work, you'll notice I'm almost always shooting into light. I'm shooting into the sun, I'm shooting into the light of a house, or I'm shooting like, you know, where the light's shining on backlighting my subject. And that's another thing that I find is important with this camera, is that, you know, I'm able to like have this extreme range of contrast, but the camera captures it all in a way that allows me to play around with it and paint with light, you know, at my desk, which is what I end up doing to finish my photographs. One of the things I always talk about is printing things and making photographs. Like, can be an image, but they also can be an object. And here's an example of something I made, like a souvenir for my exhibition, that has some of the pictures from the show, and it's basically there's an Emily Dickinson quote, and there's some of the work from the show, and they're actually postcards that can be, you know, if somebody wants to attach them and send them out, they can. So I find that printing things is important, and then that's why I'd say I spend about half of my time here doing working with my computer, and then I have a printer in the next room that prints the photos, and it's just like being in the dark room. I basically like edit my work, you know, and when I say edit, I mean like select. And I often do what I do here. It's the same process as in the dark room. Like, you know, you look at what you have, you select your photographs. I always believe that like that with photography, like there's three distinct parts to it. There's like taking the photographs, which is part one, and then there's selecting the photographs. And then the other thing that I think is really important that a lot of people don't spend a lot of time on, which is an equal, like one of these thirds, is that it is printing and modifying your picture, not in a way that makes it into something that it's not, but basically taking what you have, just like one would do in the dark room, and you're sort of sculpting with light. You know, so I photograph like a documentarian, but I print like a painter, and I find that to be interesting because, you know, even the master Ansel Adams, like when that negative came out of his camera, he was just beginning making that picture, and that's the same way digital files are. It's like you capture the photograph, and then what you do to it afterwards is a whole nother story. And rarely does something come out of a camera that's couldn't be improved. Actually, I guarantee you 99% of everything could be improved through a little bit of work. One thing that's curious about this whole idea about like every camera is a different paintbrush is that like it's amazing to have these different tools for different things when I'm working. And I find that, and then even if it's one of these cameras or if it's a $3 point and shoot like from a thrift shop, you know, that has film in it, like they all make pictures that are different. And I find that I go to whatever camera I need to make the kind of picture that I need to make. Sometimes that I need to be lightweight and easy and move around, and the SL3 is incredible for that. And then if I want to slow down and have something that has a medium format sensor in it, I find that the S system is unparalleled in that realm in terms of being able to make very large prints. But the most important thing is like whatever camera you use, you're using the right tool for you. Sometimes the tool that's the best for you is the one you're most comfortable with. And I find that you know, limiting it to these two cameras and, you know, a film camera works perfectly for me. And that's what I do. All right, cool.
That's perfect.
All right, good.
All right.
Excellent. Cool.
We covered everything.
All right, yeah. I'm pretty